these people you have certain impressions of, and you see like their private space, and it's like very strange.
Oh, meeting is now streaming.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
I'll be good.
So we're live now. So welcome to this new book news reading, celebrating writers whose books were published during the pandemic lockdown. My name is Molly Fuller, and I am hosting this reading for Lit Youngstown, a literary arts nonprofit in Northeast Ohio with programs for writers, readers, and storytellers. I would like to invite you to a first Wednesday series reading on Wednesday, December 2nd, when we'll feature poets Heather Dobbins and Barbara Sable. With more information is at lityoungstown.org. So thank you for joining us. These three poets will be reading from their new books. And after the readings, we'll have a conversation. So I think first up, it looks like we have Karen Schubert, who is the author of 5 poetry chapbooks and recipient of a Wick Poetry Center Chapbook Prize, the William Dickey Memorial Broadside Contest, an Ohio Arts Council Individual Artist Award, and residencies at Headlands Center for the Arts and the Vermont Studio Center. She is co-founding director of Lit Youngstown. Her new book is The Compost Reader, published by Accents Publishing.
Thank you so much, Molly, and thank you, Nin and Robert. What a pleasure to read with you today. This is just, I've been looking forward to this so much. So my first poem was written after I heard a story on NPR. Let me switch to speaker view here. Sorry, I'm also in the control room a tiny bit. So I heard a great story on NPR with an interview with a neuroscientist whose team had just discovered that we store words in our brains in pairs. Duality. Because we stash words in our temporal lobes in pairs. Best friend with dog, dog with cat, catatonia with last Friday, fried eggs with broken plate. We see associations before we say them. Platitude with hurricane, cantilever with out on a limb. But I digress, would not connect liminal with your back in bed in summer. Don't say that somewhere could not follow armadillo that jumps when it's alarmed, not knowing the difference between rattlesnake and pickup. We know between sideswipe and sidestep, soft shoe and the shoe that drops. Your temporal lobe lit red, can I? And hesitation, I answer come and home. So my son Lee, when he was a lad, someone gifted him a book about the presidents. And we discovered with great joy that he had actually memorized the presidents in order. And I was thinking about that today, actually, sadly remembering the Kennedy assassination. My son Springs, Lee and Charles, my good grandfathers, his great grandfathers, gave him their names. He vast enough to hold them. Child measurer, rendering my coffee dangerous with the square meat thermometer, weighing everything until the scale gave up. Child on springs, never walking, missing link, scrambling to the refrigerator top, garage roof, crook in the apple tree. Naturally, literally, generally, indulging our humor, sighing, fake exasperation when we turn the cushions askew. Child decoder, learning to read from stop signs, playing chess in tournaments, small arms reaching to move queens, startling older opponents. Wanderer, child vapor, escaping through the screen door when I swore to keep him in. His coffee table book, Homes of the Presidents, Rescued from Rain, memorizer of presidents, white-haired Lincoln at Halloween, playing the Kennedys. His sister told him, "Whatever you do, Jack, don't go to Dallas in November." Detroit Avenue birches. The late leaves November attends hover over my windshield. Those birches and their white peels stand, soon wind-stripped of color. Arms extend toward the Coldwater Lake. The lake my city limbs lowers into, shifts tones in black November, when winds from Canada practice their bellows, throw once lemon leaves at my window. Gulls the color of birches fly suspended as if in a turner over enraged oil-painted waves. Calm days the waves ice over, reflect the sun with a violence, but not yet. First the sleeting, glossing the birches, scratching my skin, coat soaked like a red sheep, heavy and clamoring to get inside. In the dream, I paint you after Mother and Sister of the Artist by Edouard Fouillard. Mother is a chair. I make her arms frame space that holds no one. Lay her knotted hands white on the black dress upholstery. I silk back her hair behind the childish ears that fold out from her face. Not a woman's face either. You remember the way Mother got old without growing up. Do you look scared because I made you a wall? Or did I make you a wall because you were scared? Your checkered dress puffing along the slim of you, the yellows ringing with the mottled wallpaper, your ceiling back and tight red hair over me, the light from the window on your cheeks, you and all I love in that room, the table with the newly finished meal, the cherry dresser behind Mother, and all the smells of that room. How did I end up in this lonely place? My sister, step out of that wall. I'm coming home. White Christmas. I will make the white Christmas I saw in the magazine. White flame on thin candles, crystal goblets of wine. I saw in the magazine guests in white sweaters, holding goblets of white wine, cream dishes, linen tables. The white sweatered guests will be content, laughing, linen tables, cream dishes, windows white with wet snow. Contentedly humming Christmas music, my guests will complete me, wet snow on the unyielding ground. My guests love Christmas music. There is no talk of leaving. The hard ground holds holly. No one is dying. I saw in a magazine the Christmas I will make when no one is dying. White candles, thin flame. This poem is written after an installation by sculptor James Turrell, who was working with space and light and perception. This was an installation at the Mattress Factory, and I didn't get to see it, but but I have friends who did, and apparently you rolled into an enclosure on your back. Epistemology of Light, after James Turrell. We could use more time in places where the red earth absorbs our footfall, where there are more lizards than people. We need evenings for long conversation over a meal made all afternoon. We are ushered past the Mona Lisa in 13 seconds, hurried through our seasons, late. No wonder we call them watches, the way we can't turn away. We need to step slowly, slowly into the silent light, lungs first, put our hands through the blue fluorescence, roll into the red chamber on our backs, feel light, touch our electric surfaces, crank open the dark, weary pores, catch the sun on our tongues, drinking all that vitamin D, be the dry and yellow rattly snake laying herself across the warming stone. And now I'll read the title poem, which is after the idea that that like tea leaf readers, we could bring someone in who could open our compost bin and tell us more about the depths of our souls because of what they see there. And I would just like to say thank you so much to Mary Gordon McFall for this gorgeous print. I was so fortunate to have a residency with Mary. We were fast friends, and I hope to see her again one day, and I'm so grateful to her. The compost reader. You are a person of contradiction. Observe the pomegranate, the way each seed has been extracted. The presence of pomegranate denotes patience, passion, self-indulgence. But see how the seeds are not so much scooped as torn from their rough and broken cavities, and the dark coffee grounds still in the unbleached filter. Obviously, you miss your best friend from 4th grade, the one with lavender tissues in her shiny purse. Eggshells. Not tucked into each other like passengers on a train, but scattered far from their mates. Here, a pile of moth-webbed cornmeal, hot pepper seeds, potato eyes, beetroots, quick to anger. And these red-soaked slices of orange spiked with cloves. Dinner party. You're afraid of the dark. Look at the layers of leaves, not raked in fall, but scooped out from under snow to cover 11 baby roses and the charred skin of a butternut squash. It's not so much that you miss your friend and her rhinestone barrettes, her sisters with J names. You wanted to be her. This poem is after the wonderful poems in the book Porcupine of Mind by Katerina Stoikova, who is now my editor. I'm so grateful to her in Accents Publishing. Kissing the Whisk, after Katerina Stoikova. At first, it felt like kissing with braces. Then my tongue found the warm caramel. We clicked, teeth and wires. You're so loopy, I whispered. Meet me tomorrow. But in the morning, I longed for the knife to slice hazelnuts for granola, nosed up the cinnamon and mace. Whisk me away, I mocked. I slid my finger along the safe edge of the knife, said, I love your cutting wit. I was on a roll. If you see a knife in the road, take it. And my last poem is a love poem for Tony. Love song. Elbows deep in compost. Now that's my idea of a date. You teasing out roots and me pulling peanut shells from the moist mix. We met late, unlike the prom date who teetered past our restaurant window on new heels, dress tight as a ski cap. Come at night and wake with me in my orange bedroom with its polished wood floor. Watch the pink peach light slip in. Pour yourself some coffee. We don't have to decide what to do with the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful. So our next reader is going to be Robert Miltner, who is right here.
How convenient.
I should have your bio memorized, but I don't. So Robert
Pronounce my
Miltner,
name right.
true, is the author of the poetry collection Hotel Utopia, short fiction collection And Your Bird Can Sing, and nonfiction collection Ohio Apertures, forthcoming in 2021. He's the recipient of an Ohio Arts Council Individual Artist Grant in Poetry and an OAC Fellowship at Vermont Studio Center. His new book is Orpheus and Echo, published by Etruscan Press.
Thank you. So this is my book. This is a 3-in-1 book from Etruscan Press. This is a new series they're developing. And it's amazing to be in a book with 2 other really excellent poets, James McCorkle and Peter Granbois. And the 3 books kind of have an interesting conversation about what the possibilities are, what we want to do with our poems, I guess. My book is Orpheus and Echo, which is an appropriation or retelling or recycling, a reinvention of the myth of Orpheus and the loss of Eurydice. But the title is the name of a band that Orpheus is in. And Echo, of course, is the backup band because what else can she do? And so I'm going to read a few pieces from each of the 3 sections. And the middle section are pieces from an imagined album. And so they're going to be pieces that comment on the larger story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Apple trees in bloom. This is the opening poem of the book. A satyr walks as easily as a bee legging pollen. A whited path transects the horizon. Tiles rouge across the farmhouse roofline and the stone cider mill. Pippins to pigeonette, russets to clochette, and look, an estate is a plan as strict as a scripture. There is neither ink-wash design, nor rook of black ink streaming tattoo shadows, nor action painting, nor watercolor blur, nor black and white photo transcriptions of the provincial road down which that satire of a centaur, goat-legged and chrome-horsed and leather-jacketed, ended idleness with a deft touch of a cut purse. Eurydice stolen away on a victory motorcycle. sound storm to dust cumulus, and then a silence so stark birds dared not sing. So Orpheus was left lost down the fence line, expalliard lane of a red-roofed domain, wandering the distance in obscure movie camera moves, as if panning the grove's rows, zooming and jump cutting, perspectives luring Orpheus into a known canvas as uncertain as the roots snaking under the copse. And so up reaches Orpheus to gapped and glinting intervals of refracting light, to boughs laden with thick as paint brushed blossoms. Once the French door greened open to him, arms wide and wanton and waiting. Once the bridle path was embroidered anemone and narcissus. Once the gravel path was well swept, as a good translation. So that's the opening piece, and I'm going to move into one of the middle pieces from the studio session. And this is probably one of the longer pieces, and I haven't read this aloud, so I will. Lost at Sea, Hart's Song. This is dedicated to the Ohio poet Hart Crane. When the fall finally ended, you wanted to slow things down. So you booked a week's cruise in the Caribbean, drinking mojitos at the unchanging pace of tropical skies. Salt rimming the glass was the color of beach sand, and the darkness following you groped noiselessly for your lover. Too bad. He was stuck in some soggy Midwestern state, feeling sorry for himself, as tedious as the endless rainy days back there. So you watched the wake, the liner etched into the glass flat water, with retrospection, the minor key you kept slipping into, while pre-recorded reggae and calypso tunes piped loudly across the empty decks, as if you were clairvoyant, dabbled in tarot or worked the Ouija. You might have seen the ghosts begin to dance. Too bad, you were too numb. One night, you found yourself unalone, talking first cautiously, then wildly, to a man at first who seemed so quiet. He parried your conversation, his sentences merging in a synchronicity so startling, you let your drink get watery and forgot where you put it. So intoxicated were you both with talk, and the two of you so charmed. Laugh now and recall how you thought he said his name was Hart, and you, with a jitterbug stomach and without smirk, introduced yourself as Soul. And each of you unlocked some secret door. Walking you along upper decks, he told you sentimental stories of love letters of his grandmother's he'd found in her attic, tied up in ribbons more frail than the pale paper. Then he turned the conversation around to bridges, and his hands alive with gestures so grand and sweeping, even he seemed uncertain about the obscurity of his metaphors. Too bad. He seemed a litter's sad-eyed runt, and into the tumbling you gave yourself. Oh, damn that love drug moonlight. For everything it gives, it takes something away. So when he walked you to your cabin and pulled you into his arms, you were a champagne bottle uncorked and poured as you felt your emotions overflow. And when was it? Just before dawn and dreamy-eyed over cold coffee? You said you recalled seeing a ghost dancing moonlit on the ship's bridge. Or had you dreamed he'd fallen overboard and you woke up soaking wet? Too bad, so were your cheeks below those sunglasses. Leaning against the brass deck rails, you could see islands, a green lost my place. A green line like the trees, a white line like the sand of the beach, moving closer, each one just as isolated as the broken shells Poseidon settles on the ocean floor. And what are islands anyway? Dead coral and cast off lava, bars of sand where palms set down roots? The dead are still alive and will start new lives back north where you'll never return when the cruise's ship is tugged and docked. So drink the sweet last of island rum from your cup. Close your eyes and listen to the boat's wake spreading behind like a simple truss. If you let yourself dream, you'll hear the ghosts start singing. First the chorus, then the bridge. That was the longest poem in the book. I'm gonna jump over to the last two closing pieces of the book. We wind up finally with Orpheus discovering that by making music, it somehow alleviates the loss. And so he finds himself in Las Vegas. Orpheus in Vegas, dream song. He turned to look back. A chorus of neon tourists tumbling from cabs and limos, from casinos pulsing poppy music. His hands hung as if busted drums, and his voice entranced. Vocal cords taut, tongue becomes stone, mouth a mute lyre, a scarecrow's ragged songs, and a glimpse of the green-eyed muse, eluding and fading. How his ears ached for the sound of leaves at sunrise, seen from the highest point of Samothrace Island, or gusting sunset cool along shore. A duet of waves, crashing cymbals, timpani and aftermath, and the arrival of echo. Then he felt a beat in his bones, rhythm in his wrists. He played walls like barons, power lines grabbed and strummed became banjos, stomped streets transformed to steel drums. Traffic stopped to listen. And then he sang. It was as if he was Aeolus calling winds from the farthest of the west. He played his body harp, scales and major keys, praising his muse, and minor keys, keening her loss. In an underground barking dog parking garage on the strip, somewhere between Mandalay Bay and the Rio. Oh, wonder, Orpheus sang. Oh, wonder, Echo refrained and looked back. 3 salt pillars crumbling. Oh, wonder, green-eyed Eurydice joined, embracing wide-eyed Orpheus and handing him back his restrung guitar. Nothing like a happy ending. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. That was wonderful. So our next reader is going to be Nin Andrews. Nin Andrews is the author of 6 chapbooks and 7 full-length poetry collections. She has won 2 Ohio Individual Artist Grants, the Pearl Chapbook Contest, the Kent State University Chapbook Contest, the Gerald Cable Poetry Award, and the Ohioana Prize for Poetry. She lives on a farm in Charlottesville, Virginia, with her husband, cows, coyotes, and many bears, which we heard about earlier. Her new book is The Last Orgasm, published by Etruscan Press.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. And thank you, Karen and Lit Youngstown, and thanks for putting together this new poetry book series of virtual readings. They are truly wonderful, and I'm honored to take part. Today, as Molly just said, I'm going to be reading from The Last Orgasm, just released from Etruscan Press. And I know you might be asking why The Last Orgasm. And my answer is simply, all good things must end. So while writing this book, I envisioned it as my last collection of poetry. I wanted to honor many of the poets that I most admired and sort of say goodbye to them and make their poems into sort of orgasmic moments. So I also think poems and orgasms are alike. They both contain small or large moments of bliss and wonder. The dirty orgasm. I know what you think. I'm the orgasm poet. I have nothing else to write about. I should stop. Or we should, the orgasm and I, now. You've had enough of our antics, our poetry, our socially unacceptable performances. Even the word orgasm should be banned. It's dirty, unkept. It leaves tracks on the floor and in the mind. I agree. I'm sick of it too. But what can I do? I, who kept an orgasm like a genie in a bottle for so long, or out of the bottle. I sought medical advice, but the doctors insist the orgasm is all in my mind. He doesn't know the orgasm can hide in my favorite coffee mug, tucked behind the dishes where no one else will find it, at the bottom of a laundry basket, or at the bottom of a laundry basket, folded and refolded like an origami bird. You need only stop obsessing, the doctor insists, and the orgasm will vanish forever. Forever? So I have been thinking about, not thinking about the orgasm, but I have my fears. If the orgasm is all in my mind, then what if my thoughts leave first? If I have to pick between an orgasm and a brain, which will it be? What if one is part of the other, like the sugar in my coffee, or the milk in my cappuccino after the froth is gone? And what am I to make of that cream curdled at the bottom of my unwashed cup? The orgasm has been contemplating the title, The Last Orgasm, and she wants to tell you, dear reader, there is no such thing. She wants you to believe that she is immortal, that she is a nymph, a mermaid, a goddess or god, a saint, even Our Lady of the Orgasm, the one and only and everlasting. And besides, she asks, who would write a book like this? Who can say when the last orgasm will be, or if it is already past? The orgasm decides to learn about social media because that is where Nin says fame happens these days and where the future is. Even an orgasm has to keep up with the times. It's no longer satisfying simply to be an orgasm in red heels. She must also exist on the web. So she logs herself in. Soon she has friends, so many friends and likes. Oh, how she loves those likes. Every day she yearns for more and more likes. How many likes, she wonders, equal one moment of bliss? The number rises and rises. Will she ever receive enough? The orgasm wants to open a Twitter account, but she isn't sure what to tweet. At first, she follows other tweeters. They tweet and tweet, forever singing to their wonderful selves. Even when she's sleeping, they're tweeting. Even when a snow-covered tree falls on a power line and cuts off her electricity. Even when she wakes the morning after, cold and shivering, and wraps herself in a robe. One day she decides to tweet too. I am lighting up a cigarette, she tweets, and I am telling you the one real truth. She licks her lips and smiles. I am your last orgasm. She enjoys the silence that follows and is just about to sign off of Twitter forever. But then someone retweets her tweet, and someone else retweets the retweet. A little flutter begins in her heart. She sucks in deeply and glows like the tip of her lit cigarette. The orgasm decides to become a poet and signs up for a class at a community college. She is happy to see they accept all kinds at this college. She doesn't feel a bit out of place. But her professor is forever berating the aspiring poets. This is not a poem, he tells the class. You lack discipline. You lack form and style. Have you never read the classics? The orgasm is reminded of her early days of learning how to be an orgasm. Often she heard, "That's no orgasm. Have you done your homework?" There were so many tests back then, difficult tests. Walking through walls, for example, for real orgasms, everyone knows there is no such thing as a wall. Nothing stops them. At first, she bumped into every wall she met, her skin a purple bruise. No matter how great her pain, she kept trying until she walked through wall after wall, like a regular Houdini of orgasms. But when the walls moved through her, especially the stone ones, she caught a chill. Her temperature dropped 20 degrees and she started to sneeze. It's like this, she learned, whenever you make love to the ones with no hearts or souls. She'd only meant to walk through the walls, not love them. It was the same way with poems. She had to be careful which ones would travel inside her and which she must never compose. Black dress on a white carpet after Cesar Vallejo. You will leave me in Toledo on a snowy day in winter, a day I already remember. You will leave me in Toledo. Already I see you stepping outside in your skimpy black dress, your tall boots. The wind lifts your hair. You don't look up or back. You are but an exclamation mark on a white page on a Sunday in winter in Toledo, Ohio. I know this because today is a Sunday. The church bells are ringing. The faithful in their fur coats and hats, their hands buried deep in their pockets, are on their way to worship. Even as I write these lines and I feel not you, but the absence of you, like a pearly winter glow. Even as I make love to you, even as I worship you, your lips, your thighs, your clavicle and hip bones, and long, slender toes, even as you fall asleep beside me, even as you call out my name in a dream, as your black dress sways on the wicker chair above the white carpet, and I see you as a dream in a black dress, an ache in my skin and deep in my bones, and suddenly I know you are leaving. I will watch you leave. I have never felt so alone, so lost. I want to wake you. I want to tell you. Love will tie us in knots. Love will beat us with sticks. Love will say he did nothing to us. You know how love is, so full of lies, but it will be too late. It already is. You are already leaving me, stepping outside into the snow with no one but the sky as your witness, the winter birds, the trees, the wind. Song of Your Orgasm after Whitman. Every atom belonging to me belongs to you, and you know it. You who loaf so freely about my soul and have for eons. You as lean as a spear of meadow grass, a stalk of wheat. Always I see you, and everywhere, even here, when you are 1,000 miles away. I can't help but breathe you in. Your scent in every room in me, in every corner and shelf and dust mote. In every moment I inhale you, intoxicant that you are, a lethal substance. I should not let you, not now, not ever, not you, who are on my lips, tongue, fingers, hair. Forever I taste the salt of you, the sorrows and songs of you, who I am so in love with. I will go to the brink of my mind, exposed, nude, mad to be in contact with you. The Last Orgasm. What you have long suspected is true. It happened to me on August 11th, 2013, a Sunday. My husband served me coffee and croissants in bed. Ada the terrier joined us and snuggled beneath the covers. My husband placed a red cushion behind his head and read the Times. I turned on NPR. Krista Tippett was interviewing a Zen master on the program on being. The master said that all I needed was to follow my breath. So I tried following it until my breath became a sigh. That's when our visitor stopped in. She looked at me and then away and then apologized. We've had a nice life together. We've seen a lot of sunsets. We've swum the length of 3 oceans. We've surfed the days, the months, the decades. I once held my breath for 7 days just waiting for you to arrive. I've been ashore 3,141,592 times, and now I'm tired, dog tired, as you say. Outside, a robin was singing. My husband listened and said nothing. He stood up and put on a terry cloth bathrobe. He looked out the window at what had once been our sea. We both did. We remembered years when the waves came up to the door. We thought they would keep rising and rising, crashing against our shoulders. We thought they'd wash us away. Now there was only sand, miles and miles of sun-bleached sand. It's okay, my husband said. I too am old. I'm tired of fooling around. He picked up a broom and began to sweep. The sand was everywhere, blowing through the windows and beneath our doors. A single shell lay on the floor. He picked it up and gave it to me as an offering. Something to remember me by, he said. When I pressed the shell to my ear, I heard the wind rushing through my empty rooms. I heard a tiny wave rising and falling against a distant shore. The last one, like God. One day the orgasm decides it's over, done, fini. They say they are suspending all services. They have been stepped on too often, looked down on from above, or worse, taken for granted, forgotten, abandoned. What happened to the days when we were all you wanted, thought up, counted, they ask among themselves as they put on their pants and hats, fasten their buttons and pack their bags. Of course, they have only a handful of belongings, most as light as tissue paper. But even as they slip out of doors and windows in the middle of the night, they are careful not to look back for fear they will burst into tears. After all, they studied you for so long. You are all they dream of and know. Like God, they love everything about you. Also, like God, they know when you ask, was I good? You don't want the real answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nin. That was wonderful. So now we're going to have a conversation between the 3 readers and writers. So Karen, did you want to ask the first question?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. Oh, there's so many things I would love to talk to you about. Nin, there's so much I love about this book. One thing that's really fun is the meta element where the orgasm refers to a character named Nin in the 3rd person, which is just so delightful. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you're up to there.
It's funny that you asked because I was reading it today and I thought, oh, I wish I could have not done that. It's so alarming. But I so the book goes back and forth between my point of view and the orgasm's point of view. And the orgasm is much more reluctant to leave and much more of an optimist. And so we have kind of a dialogue. And I imagine I like to sort of imagine the orgasm is watching me. And so I try to watch me with the orgasm. So I call myself Nin to see, well, what would she be seeing out there? So it's kind of this weird dynamic. But it is kind of alarming a year after writing it to see, coming back to it and saying, oh, I'm all over this book. This is really, I'm not sure about this. But thank you for the question and thank you for suggesting it's a positive thing.
Oh, I think it is. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Robert, my question for you is about writing a myth in the scaffolding of contemporary life. Like what you were thinking about as you were doing that.
Well, the Orpheus myth continues to be brought back and used by people because it's a story of loss, but a profound loss, losing and regaining and losing again. And I was drawn to it because the Orpheus character to me is he's a music god and he's a poet, and so he becomes the vehicle for people to process loss and try to recover and reclaim and readjust. But by placing him as a performing musician and a songwriter, it allowed me to put it in a larger sense, a more contemporary sense, because what if Orpheus came back? Would he form a band and would he perform? What would he do? I was playing around with the idea of time travel in this because it jumps from ancient Greece to Las Vegas and all places in between. In the middle, there's this going into the underworld of a recording studio and using all these masks and devices to speak through. And it was just like a rich playground for me, really, to be able to do it and to write in a way that the sound of the words of the poems are the story of the book. That's the real story for me in this, is the sound of poetry and the sound of words. I have no idea if that remotely answered your question or not.
Well, I'd love for you to talk more about that. I mean, I love the structure of these poems, and they are like, I mean, it's like a prose poem, but like little pebbles of this gorgeous sound, this beautiful language, just strewn about. I mean, it's just so incredible and interesting. So, it seems like a distinct format. Is this something that you had tried before? And just talk a little bit about that, maybe. The format.
The format developed because I was, in looking back at the origins of Western poetry and getting to the source of it, it was an oral tradition, first of all. And what we have are these remnants of the Sappho fragments, which they look like mice have been chewing at them, but things deteriorate over time. So there's a loss of the actual text, and we work from the pieces that are left. And all we've got to go on is the sound and the implication. And when you read the body of it, we piece the story together. So I liked that I could do that in the prose poem because it's such a tight little form, and it's very compressed. And so I opened up these spaces, and then I started to open up the spaces where I would pause for breath, to have an oral tone to it, an oral feeling to it. And then in thinking about other ancient forms, all the even numbered lines, I put a caesura in the middle just because. And when I had a small chapbook from these poems published, the two poets who were working on it called them rivers that ran through it. And I never thought about that. I'm going, wow, there's rivers in these poems because of the way that they just intentionally create these odd figures in it. And it made it very fluid, and it made things move in a way that I began to think of them as like sheet music. So if you read them and you read the pauses, and all these pauses are in there, they were literally, the breath is the line. That's Charles Olson, the breathing of the poem. But how would you script that? to me, it almost felt like those times where you see the dance lesson and they've got the shoes, the dirty shoe steps on the floor. And like, I fall down when I do those. But that's what I was trying to get at. I wanted to really push the boundary of prose poetry, but yet keep it within the block. It was a puzzle and a challenge. But yeah, I loved what happened. And it became very addictive as I went on. And finally I said, I have to stop doing these. So there again is another sort of answer to your question, I guess.
They're really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I had no idea how you did them. I was like, I have no idea how you do this, but there's sort of like a drug. You read them, you say, I don't know what this is, but I like it. So there's a kind of magic there that you've accomplished.
Yeah. It was a magical thing. I'll probably never do anything like that again, but it was perfect for what this project wanted it to do. It was almost as though the project was telling me, try it this way and trust this. Right. I'd have to add that when I was, before I did this, I had recorded an album with a jazz musician of some of my earlier poems. And I was actually in a recording studio like that. And it was the underground. It was this magical place, where you'd go and dredge these poems up and dredge the things in it. And then you'd leave and go back to the real life. So that's what happened.
Oh, that's interesting, the metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question for both of you. And it's something that I'm puzzled with about my own work. All three of us make a lot of references to artworks that have an influence, references to other authors who've had an influence. And I wonder if you two would talk about what you do with it. Maybe I'll jump in at the end. I mean, because we all do it and it just works so well in our work. I mean, how intentional is it? How accidental is it? There's the influence of writing in the style of writers like you do, Nin, the way that we turn to artwork. And in our notes, I was really, when I looked at your notes and mine, I'm going, wow, we all do this. But we want to be very clear that we're using that stuff. How does that enrich your work? I mean, does that launch the work? Does that expand the work? Is it something that comes out of the work that's visual or auditory, or do we step into the people? I mean, I'm Camille Monet in one of my poems.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nin?
Well, in this particular book, it's actually, there's kind of a secret. I couldn't decide which order it was. So if you read it in the reverse order, it says right in the beginning, there's that poem where I'm in a cafe and I'm thinking about Ashbury, and I decided to write a book in honor. I mean, that was the initial impulse behind the book. At last, I'm just going to give into all my influences, which is, what do you do with them? Well, I'm going to honor them all in this book. There were way too many to fit in the book.
Yeah.
And it was very weird because a lot of, when I deliberately did that, then a lot of the influences didn't like each other. Like they couldn't cohabitate. Their voices were so some of them just couldn't get along. I couldn't. I had this mess on my hands at first.
Yeah.
So I did it deliberately this time in wanting to honor that kind of love, that passion that you have for these, and gratitude you have for these other people's work.
Yeah.
But then people were complaining to me that, then there was the question, I also wanted it to be my poem. So I wanted to have my stamp on them. So then there was a question of when you put after, if you put the name of those people too many times, then the readers are so like, am I supposed to be looking that up? Whatever. And I didn't want that to interfere. So I took all of the references. Some of them I thought they're so obvious. Like, I'll say it when I'm reading it that I'm after Whitman, but anyone would know that Song of the Organ, they're going to know that, but I don't actually put it in the book. I put it at the end because I thought it was distracting.
Yeah.
But it caused kind of a problem in this book. But I just feel like we're all swimming in this water together, and there's enough love to share. Honestly, I wish, but I don't know what else to say about the influence of other, I like seeing it. I like seeing, I mean, I know people complain about it, that kind of ekphrastic writing, whatever, but I love it. I just feel like it heightens the experience for me.
Yeah, I love it too. I love reading other people's ekphrastic work, and to inhabit someone else's creative space is a real pleasure. I like the different kinds of opportunities there are there to imagine being in that place, or to be painting it, or to be addressing it. It's a nice way to get out of one's own mind and the limitations of my own creativity. And I think I've learned a lot from the necessity of such a close reading. If you're going to write from a piece of art, it just are seeing it so intensely. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really fun.
The one thing I really admire, Karen, about your work is that, and is your humor. There's this sometimes very, very light, sometimes understated, but it's there's this beautiful sort of line of it that sort of goes along, and I don't know if it's a deliberate thing or just but it's informative, it's clever, it's subtle, it's insightful. I mean, it's just there. I don't, like I said, I don't know if you're consciously doing that or it's just, that's who Karen Schubert is, but.
Well, that's so nice of you, and thank you for all that. I have to say that one of the great pleasures of reading for me is when you are in the audience and you laugh so loud and so hard, and it's like out the whole room says, oh, it's okay to laugh. I think it's I like laughing, and I like making people laugh. I like humor. I think a challenge for me, if I could come at the question in a little slant maybe, is how to arrange a reading with the humor in it, because not every poem is funny, but one might not know that at the beginning. I heard a reader say one time, I know my last poem is funny, but this one isn't. And it is tricky, right? I mean, and it was true. I might have laughed at that moment, but I saw that it turned out to be very serious. And I think sometimes the audience can feel like the rug has been pulled out if they laugh and then later it's turns out that it wasn't funny, So I try to be sort of mindful of that as well. But I love, I mean, that's just so much fun for me if I can make an audience laugh and just feel that. And so I do pay attention to that sort of narrative arc, but I don't know what to say about writing humor. I guess my mind just sort of works in those sort of puns and those like, when I was a graduate student, I had an editorial assistantship for the Journal on the International Study of Humor. And one of the articles I read was about puns. And it turns out that puns are very formulaic and they exist in every language. And there's a formula for how far away they can be from the original word. Right? If it's too far away, you won't get the joke. But if it's too close, you won't get the joke. So I really love that. I love that idea that all over the world we're making one another laugh. I think that's just fantastic. And it can be a really delightful way to take a swipe at some annoying cultural thing or to laugh at oneself, right? To not take oneself so seriously. I just think it's fun.
Right. Well, a lot of the time, I mean, I probably said that wrong. I didn't mean that all of your poems, obviously, but a lot of your funny poems have a very serious, they're a very serious edge. I mean, and they're hysterical, but still, yeah, I just admire it so much. So anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, you've got some wonderful humor running right below the surface of your poems as well, right? I feel like a lot of your poems are written with a kind of a wink
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it is odd when they're not funny and everybody's looking at you like, what was that? Yeah. What just happened? I mean, right in the middle of this book, there's some kind of sad poems, like, whoa, anyway. And it is an odd thing to read either one when you can't hear the audience or look at them, you have no idea, like, was that funny? It's like you can't, anyway. So.
You both do it really well, though. I think it gives you both the range of your work is richer for it, because in both of your books and in your work in general, which I know so well, there's times you're quite serious. There are times when your emotional core of the poem is in one place, and you'll switch, or you'll just make that move in the middle of a poem to something that's playful, and it opens the poems up, I think, because I don't know. I used to think that if we tried to be funny in our poems, we were afraid we were lessening ourselves, or if we want to be taken seriously, we have to write serious poems. And I think putting humor in your poems is a statement of your confidence of yourself as a writer. Okay. And I think you both do it really, really well. I can't order miso soup, Karen, without thinking of that. It's not the menu. I think of your poem. Right?
Well, so that was a moment when there was a young woman who was having dinner with a big crowd of people, and she was nervous. She didn't know anyone. And I had a lot of empathy for how nervous she was, but she was talking and just kind of being a little bit chatty. And then at one point, she said, "I don't trust miso soup." And then later she explained that some restaurants put fish paste in it, and she's a vegetarian, but just that just stuck with me. I don't trust miso soup. And I thought, I have to run with that. But I suppose that's what we're all just doing, right? Just listening for all the things that are going on around us, and then just turning them around. Yeah. Well, I'm so sad this is over. It's been a great pleasure talking with both of you. Thank you both so much. Thank you to Molly, and thank you, Molly.
Cameo.
Hey, Molly.
I really appreciate it. And then good luck with the Bears and everything.
Thanks for doing it, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Molly, happy housewarming.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
To
Yeah.
see you all in person before too long. Take good care.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.